Welcome to the first installment of Prospero's War Stories, Tales from the Front Lines of Procurement. The goal of this series is to capture stories of successes, failures, mishaps, and lived experiences from buyers and vendors of complex technology solutions. I am Matthew Searing, COO of Prospero, and I'm here today with my business partner, Donald Searing, CEO of Prospero. And the goal of why we wanted to do this podcast is to discuss things we have seen out in the procurement world as to the issues we've seen and just the experiences we've experienced, and also to talk about how Prospero, the platform we're building, will do a better job at that. And Don, do you want to kick it off as to Prospero?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So the Prospero platform is a special platform that we're building that's designed to streamline the procurement process, reduce the risk in the procurement process, and really focus on matching buyers who have needs for complex technology solutions with the right vendors. I've seen many failures in this space, both as the buyer and frankly as the vendor. So I've spent the last 20 years as a solutions architect for a number of different companies, working in a number of different market segments or spaces. Like I said, the last 15 or 16 years has been in the healthcare space, specifically working with healthcare payers, so large insurance companies. And I've seen a lot of interesting RFP processes. I've seen a lot of projects that started with the best of intentions, but ended in failure. And along the way, there were signs that this wasn't going in the right direction. And I think, what we wanted to do was take that knowledge and that experience that I have, along with others that I've worked with, to really look at how do we create a better process that can help us avoid some of these common pitfalls, help us find out, hey, are we going off on the wrong path when we first get there? Or earlier in the process, and from there really dig in to create something that works better. And I think that's a huge challenge. And that was what, when we really first laid out the concept of the Prospero platform, that was kind of our goal, is to really make this process start to work. And not just for the buyers, but for the buyers and the vendors and everyone involved in the process. Because buyers want the best solutions that meet their needs, and the vendors, they want to sell their solutions to those buyers, right? So there's always got to be a great match in solution and need. And I think if we can help match those cases up better, we would reduce the amount of failure. I know when we've done research on this, right, Matt, we found that, research talks about 60 to 70% of projects fail when they go through this implementation process, and that's an awful lot of wasted money, right? And that's an awful lot of wasted time. And at the end of the day, the buyer who needed this piece of technology still doesn't have it, right? And they're still having that same problem.
Yeah. So the goal of Prospero's War Stories is really just kind of dive deeper into the experiences we've seen, to kind of flesh out why and where Prospero's system comes into play here. We feel like explain to the market out there right now, the RFP platforms that we have dealt with. Give me a little bit of information on where you think they're failing the market, the buyer and the vendor.
Yeah, I think we're starting to move in the right direction with some of the things that are out there. I mean, there's a lot of focus right now on, customer reviews and things like that. But in the business I've seen, everybody assumes that they're unique, right? That they do something slightly different than somebody else. And so while the reviews are interesting, they don't always necessarily capture what I'm looking for, right? So maybe this vendor had a problem working with a very large company, but they might be the perfect fit for a smaller company. And the level of review and feedback that's coming across today doesn't capture that, right? It's the it's kind of like what we're seeing is like Yelp, but for business solutions, and that doesn't always work in the same way that Yelp doesn't always work. I mean, some of the times, how many times you've gone to a restaurant that's on Yelp, that's one of your favorites, and it's got 10 0 or 1-star reviews, and you're like, did these people even go to the same restaurant that I went to? So I think that same level of error and non-applicability, that's a problem with anything that just does reviews. So I think it's critical that you put those reviews in context, that you collect additional information along the way, whether it's the sentiment of the people involved in the project as you're trying to execute it, whether it's really digging in early to define the need better, giving people pre-templates or templates and pre-formatted guidelines for the kinds of solutions they're looking for, outlining common enterprise architecture schemas that work for this segment. And I think focusing on that and really understanding that and helping the people who are looking to buy solutions better fit their ask into the standard templates that the vendors are expecting. I think there's less of a need for the customization, less of a need for kind of moving around to different or having to kind of bring together a number of different solutions to meet someone's needs. If we can simplify that process and start by making sure people are asking the right questions and making sure that the vendors have the right answers to those questions, they fit together in a better way, and we'll end up with a better outcome. And part of that, I mentioned that these are market segment focused, and I think one of the things we're doing differently is really focusing on a specific market segment to start with. So we recognize that what a health insurer is looking for in terms of solution can be very different than what a manufacturing company is looking for in terms of solutions, from different types of solutions, different security needs, hosting needs, and all those kinds of things are going to vary by each of those different market segments. And right now, I don't see anybody outside of Prospero that's even looking at or separating their solutions with that level of intelligence and it built in around it. And I think that's a huge opportunity, and that's the opportunity that we're focused on going out and trying to solve.
Yeah, definitely. The market is very general, and we're trying to bring specific detail to a specific market. That's because an RFP or the competitors out there don't necessarily meet what a specific segment is. They're just saying, here's a product, use it, and try to find vendors. And we're saying, no, we're going to build a better way forward that's going to be more focused, and saying, here's vendors, and buyers. Here's a place specifically for the healthcare industry to come together, and then eventually expand out beyond that, but to come together and find what you're looking for, and to find that that match, that perfect match that I think is elusive out there. That's why all those projects fail, because you think you have that RFP out there, and you're like, I'm looking for this product or this feature, and you may, the vendor may or may not have it. You may have the wrong vendor. You may have, brought the wrong vendors in, and there may be another player out there that has no idea about those RFPs.
Right. Well, and that's where, you look at our process, and we'll talk about more in this series, but we've got a 5-step process, and the RFP is actually step 3, right? So we've got things that the buyer can do before the RFP happens to make that more successful. And then we have things that happen afterward. I know you've got experience as a lawyer, and essentially, focused on doing contracts between, the companies you've worked for and your buyers. And, things can go off the rails after the RFP, right? In terms of contracting, and then even beyond that, and just in terms of the implementation, right? And I think that's probably, Matt, the right scope for why we're doing these stories, right? We want to talk about the kinds of things that go wrong and right, while this is happening, while this process is happening. So things that go off the rails early on, where maybe they're asking for something that just doesn't exist. Things that go off the rails during the RFP, just in terms of the wrong decision-making process being used, and things that go off the rails in contracting and implementation. And I think, unless you've kind of been in the trenches, and we're using this kind of war stories framework here, but I think it fits in terms of, if you've been in the trenches of this and been there, printing off 8 paper copies of your 500-page RFP response and having to figure out how to get it across the country by tomorrow, like that kind of story and that kind of experience is something that everyone in sales and in who's been out there trying to buy this kind of process beyond just procurement, right? Procurement and the business users, everyone that's out there trying to get this kind of solution to their problem. They've seen a lot of these stories, and I think everyone's got their story to tell about how this process worked for them or just totally didn't work for them. And I think in the first part of this series, we want to focus on things I've seen, right, and things you've seen over the past couple decades of just projects that have gone off the rails, procurement process that just doesn't gel and doesn't match up and doesn't, you think there's all this money and all this process built in. You think that it would be aimed to get us to a better solution, right? To a better outcome, or let's shift those goals and make, let's reduce the number of failures. And what we see is people doing the same process over and over and over again and getting the same really poor performance out of it. And I think that's to me the driving need for the Prospero platform is really for us to be able to say, the process is broken. It gives us broken results. So why do we keep doing it? And it's a really expensive process, and we spend a lot of time on it, both on the buyers and the vendor side. And we do this little dance, and it goes on and on and on. And in the end of the day, there isn't a better outcome. And everyone along the way thinks that they're changing the process or adding something in to improve the outcome. And out of my experience, I just don't see it. I just don't see that incremental changes or tweaking this or tweaking that gets us to a better outcome. So we got to find a better way to move that needle. And I think, our platform is designed to be a comprehensive approach. So it's not just a little tweak, it's a shift to a new process and new platform. And that part of that platform is tracking and managing that, so that we'll learn through those processes that are happening on our platform, and we'll create and find better ways as they appear. So again, this is all about collecting information. It's all about using data to drive a better process going forward. And I think that's where, by capturing the whole process, by encouraging people to run their RFPs through this process from start to implementation, we'll start to gather the data that's necessary to really move that needle. And that'll be our success metric, right? When we start seeing the projects on our platform that are executing for our clients and for both our buyer and vendor clients, that they're actually succeeding, and they're succeeding at a rate that's significantly higher than what's happening today.
Yeah. Well, awesome. This is excellent. We definitely, this is just the kind of intro to why we're doing the war stories, and the next several podcasts we will go into specific issues I know you and I have both dealt with. So I look forward to this. This is fun, and definitely I thank you for the time, and we'll dive into some more stories here in a little bit. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.